Hi everyone! You're listening to When They Forget, a Dementia and Alzheimer's Stories podcast. We're really happy you're listening today, and we've got a great show for you. If you have an Alzheimer's or dementia story to share, we'd love to hear it. You can call and leave us a voicemail at 850-254-9595, and we'll share your story on the show. You can also record a voice memo on your phone or via your webcam and email that to us at whentheyforgetpodcast@gmail.com. And if you don't want to record your story, you can send it to us in an email and we will read it for you on the show. All right, let's get into our topic today. We have a couple of stories from our listeners, and then Jen and I have decided to talk to you about our mom's money problems when we first learned that she had Alzheimer's.
Our first story today comes from someone who needs no introduction to Debbie and I, but probably will need an introduction to everyone listening. My husband Brian asked what our most recent topic was, and I told him money. And wouldn't you know it, a day or so later, I got an email from him with this story.
My name is Brian, and I am calling about my grandmother. She had dementia. On a side note, I'm also Jennifer's husband, and I think she's doing a wonderful job, along with her sister. So yay to you guys for bringing attention to this stuff. Anyway, so money issues. Grandma was the nicest, most kind person that I ever knew, and my most favoriteest person in the whole wide world. She was still a wonderful lady, and we actually lived with her for a time when we were between houses, and we noticed that she was starting to forget things, and we would start to have the same conversations over again. But one thing that really stood out was when we started receiving a whole bunch of stuff in the mail. Grandma was a very giving person, and she was used to writing checks, essentially. So we started getting all these things in the mail, like books, or like from a book club, or videos from a video club, or she was basically anything that came in that looked like a bill, she would send a check to. So essentially, any of those old paper schemes that you guys that a lot of people know about, used to come in the mail. They would say, you owe $29.95 or only $29.95. Grandma would cut a check. So eventually we figured out what was going on and why we were getting all these gifts and all of this stuff. And it was because when she would get the mail, she would open these things up and cut a check for whatever amount of money was needed to get this stuff rolling. Anyway, eventually Dad had to take over her finances, but that was a funny story, and that's something that watch out for, because it could happen again. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Yeah, that's about it.
I've got to send out a big thank you to my husband. He listens to every episode and has been incredibly supportive. Now, let me ask you, what would you do if you were diagnosed with Alzheimer's? Here is Dan's answer to that question.
Hi, my name is Dan Jaworski, and the question I have is, what would you do if you were diagnosed with a disease that was going to kill you somewhere between 3 and 20 years with an average of 8, and take every memory and function from you along the way? Well, with minutes of getting this diagnosis, I ended up calling the Ironman Foundation to try to get into the Ironman Kona World Championships. Nobody answered their phone anymore, so I just dialed the main number, started pounding out numbers, leaving messages, 20 to 30 people. Long story short, on February 6th of 2021, I'll be racing Ironman Kona. And I had to get in through an exemption because the only way to get in is qualify by winning your age group. And because I'm not athletic enough, the only chance to do that would probably be at age 75, when I'd be the only person in my age group, and I'm 55 right now. So grateful for the Ironman Foundation for that opportunity. I told my doctor after learning of the diagnosis, I told him that there's always an outlier and that he could write the book, and I was going to try to become the first survivor. I'm doing this through the Mediterranean diet, strict adherence, exercise through the Ironman, sleeping at least 7 hours a day, brain exercises, math, puzzles, Tai Chi, Sudoku, etc., and the meds that are out there, which aren't very many. Basically, I'm going to try to outwork the damn thing. Soon after that, I contacted the Alzheimer's Association about their longest day. I think it's a clever campaign. You could customize and be creative. For the longest day, what I'm trying to do is I'm not asking anyone for money. I'm trying to dedicate each of my 140.6 miles at Kona to those that have been affected by the disease. Again, no money. And then at the finish line, what I'd love to do, I'm going to find my wife. We got a big crew coming with us to Hawaii, and I'm going to try to read. I'm going to try to memorize all the names and the stories, 140.6 of them, and then recite them at the finish line, and then collectively cross the finish line symbolically with all these people giving the disease the middle finger. It's going to be an epic day. If you have anyone that would like a mile, they can contact me on Instagram at Dan Jaworski, or my email, which is jaworskidj@yahoo.com, and that's JAWORSKIDJ@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening to my story, and Carpe Diem. Bye.
I've listened to Dan's story a few times now, and it gets me every time. Debbie and I are cheering for you, Dan, for Kona, and for you to be an Alzheimer's outlier. We've also dedicated mile 38 of your Kona Ironman to our mom, Bobby Lee. I've included a link to Dan's longest day webpage where you can see the miles that have been dedicated, and I've also included his email address in the show notes. Before my sister and I tell our money stories about Mom, we want to take a minute and talk about how you can share your Alzheimer's or dementia story with us so we can play it on our podcast. We have a voicemail line you can call. That number is 850-254-9595. You can also record your story on your cell phone or using your webcam or Zoom audio and email that to us. Our email is whentheyforgetpodcast@gmail.com. However you want to send us your story, we'll play it on our show. And if you don't want to send us a recording, you can email us your story and we'll read it on the podcast. You can also find us on most socials at the handle whentheyforget. And we'd also love it if you would rate and share our podcast wherever you're listening. All right, now let's get back to the episode. Hi, sister.
Hey, sister. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm great.
Good.
No, I am. It's a beautiful day today, and the sun is shining, and I don't know. I'm going out for a walk today. So.
Good. I have mountains of gravel and topsoil in my driveway to put in the yard.
That sounds like so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think my walk sounds a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, most likely. Because my weekend is booked solid.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's always good to keep busy.
Yeah.
Especially during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure. All right. So we have a trickling of stories coming in from people.
Oh, good. Well, at least it's starting to trickle.
Yeah.
Because the faucet was off.
The faucet was off. We had no stories at all. So now we have a trickling of stories, which is exciting. And today we're going to talk about Mom and money stuff and how we eventually figured out that her money was a disaster, and then she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, well, dementia first, right after that. And if anybody has any money stories or any like things that they noticed or weird money things that happened with their family member, we would love to hear them.
Absolutely. I believe that for most people, I think that money is the first sign. Irresponsibility with money is one of the first signs of dementia or Alzheimer's, is just losing that ability to just keep track of your money and know the difference between a good choice and a bad choice.
Yeah.
And so for us, it was very frustrating because we just thought our mom was being irresponsible with money. But in the end, it turned out to be the beginning of her onset.
Yeah. Yeah. And we realized afterward, after we got the whole picture, just how long it had been going on and everything that she had done. So the first thing that happened, and this was in the fall of 2013, it was actually probably closer to November of 2013, I got a call from Mom, and as we were talking, she got very stressed out, and then she said, something like, "Oh, Jen, I've done it now." And I said, "What?" And she said, "I charged up my Target card, and now I can't afford food." And so I, having no idea what's going on, was like, "Mom, why in the world are you buying food at Target?" I knew that there were big Targets that had grocery stores. We have very few of them up here, but I knew, and I was like, "Why are you buying food at Target when you can just go to your local Fry's or Fred Meyer or whatever it is down there?" And she said, "I don't have any money." And I was like, "Why don't you have money?" And she said something about her bank account having no money in her bank account, and she had no Social Security, so she got a Target card to buy her groceries. And I tried talking to her about it, and she didn't make very much sense at all. And so all I did, I tried not to be frustrated, but I'm sure at the time I came off very frustrated because Mom always cared about money. One of the things I remember as a child is her sitting at the table with the bills and the calculator, figuring everything out. She seemed always responsible with money, so I was frustrated, and I probably said something like, I'll look into it, or I'll try to help you with it. Let's talk about it later." And when we hung up, within minutes, I had an email to you, and I put in the subject line, "This is important, it's about Mom," or something like that.
I remember.
Yeah. And then I went through the whole thing about the Target card. Mom said she has a Target card that she's charged up and she can't afford groceries. And do you know anything about what's going on? And within minutes, you sent me a text message and said something like, "It's worse than you know. I'll tell you later."
I did.
Yeah.
And at the time when you sent me that email, I didn't know it was as bad as it was. But after you sent me the email, around the same time, I had gotten a call from her church leader. And it all kind of happened at the same time. It's really strange. And I don't know if you reached out to her church leader, but he called me and he was telling me how bad it was with Mom and how much in a hole she was, and how he had been paying her bills, or the church had been paying her bills for a couple of months because she couldn't afford even her rent or her electricity. And, I'd go over to her house, and it was Arizona in the summer. I'd go over to her little apartment, and she'd have it up. No air conditioning going. And, the fans were going full blast. And I just thought, she's a little old lady. She gets cold. She doesn't like the air conditioning. And it was really because she couldn't afford to turn on the air conditioning. And I didn't know that until I had gotten the email and then the phone call. And so that's when I responded to you. It's worse than you think. And at that point, we got on the same page and all started investigating. And I was there in person, and so I went over or I had her come over and had her bring everything to me. And it was a show. It was like nothing made sense. Her register, her checking account register, because she was still doing it by hand, did not make sense. There were so many overdraft charges. her bank account was so incredibly in the hole, and every time the church would bring her up to, pay off her overdraft charges, more would hit.
Yeah.
So we went to the bank. This was the first time we went to the bank. Well, we went to several banks, but the first one we went to is, and I know some of this you're going to need to jump in because you were more aware of the PayPal situation than I was, but Mom was under the impression that the bank was PayPal.
Oh.
She thought that they were the same because the money came out of her checking account. So she was at a very small branch of a bank. I can't even remember the name of it, and it doesn't matter. But she got in with the branch manager, and she started arguing with her about the overdraft and why are you PayPaling me? She used PayPal as a verb, as a noun, as an adjective. She just thought everything was PayPal because she didn't understand how PayPal works.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, the lady was shaking and she had tears in her eyes because Mom just would not listen to her. It was kind of like, if we go back to maybe the second or third episode, the 5-volt battery situation again, where Mom just dug in her heels because it was her reality was the bank was PayPal and PayPal was the bank. Yeah. So when PayPal would take this money, it was the bank taking her money and overdrawing her account.
Yeah. Yeah. So with PayPal, when I went and looked at that, and I never got access to her actual PayPal account. She was getting some sort of a statement, and she showed me a statement. And what she did is she had an old Gateway computer, and she kept getting viruses because she would download things from emails. So the elderly will get an email and it'll say, Catherine has something important for you, or your friend Tracy, has sent you a card. And, Mom had a friend named Tracy or knew someone named Catherine. And so she downloaded things and got a virus. She ended up paying for a virus service that was $39.99 a month, which is a tremendous ripoff. I'll just say that. Because there's so many free services out there. Yeah. I'm just going to say that's a tremendous ripoff. And it's one of those targeted things to people who don't understand. Mom didn't understand, and she ended up opening a PayPal account and charging the $39.99 a month on PayPal. But because she had no money in her PayPal account, it was coming from her bank account. And then with that same PayPal account, she bought a vacuum at Walmart and charged it with monthly payments on her PayPal account. And then the other thing she did, bless her heart, was she bought this face cream that was supposed to make you look years younger.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I thought to myself, and I hope I didn't say it out loud to her, why in the hell do you need face cream? You're 70 years old. The wrinkles aren't going to go away. But now...
that ship has sailed.
And I think about it now, and I think when I'm 70, I'm probably going to be a little self-conscious about my wrinkles, and I might buy an auto refill of a face cream, which is what she did. It was a monthly or like every other month cream that was coming, and it was, it wasn't inexpensive. It was $70 or $80 every 2 months, and that was also on her PayPal. So each of these things would hit PayPal. There would be no money in her PayPal account, so PayPal would hit the bank, which was already overdrawn, and then that would trigger an overdraft fee. So she had 3 payments like that were coming out. And so then 3 overdraft fees, which they're not cheap. They're $35, I think.
Yeah.
And so every month when her Social Security would come in, she was in the hole with all these overdraft fees and all these payments. And you can go into other stuff because there was a few other things she had going on with her bank account. And her Social Security would come in and it would cover the overdraft fees, and then all of these charges would start hitting again. And then they would create more overdraft fees, and it just became this horrible cascading cycle. But that's what was going on with her PayPal. The other thing that she had auto coming out of her account was DirecTV. She signed up for a 2-year contract, and it was a contract that started really low and ended very high. And about midway through, that DirecTV payment every month was also overdrafting her bank account.
And they would not let me, when we went into the bank, I was not the power of attorney. Mom didn't have a power of attorney at that point. Again, power of attorney, very important.
Yes.
But because I was with Mom, they would allow me to talk. But they would not allow her to shut down her bank account, to stop all of this until all of those PayPal subscriptions were canceled.
Mm-hmm.
And her DirecTV was canceled. They would not allow her to close her bank account. So it was this vicious cycle that was just a wheel that, like a snowball rolling downhill every single month. It got to be more and more and more. And I mean, if anybody has ever gotten into one of those crazy virus protection software deals where you try to get a human to actually cancel it, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah.
And I know you had trouble canceling the DirecTV.
I did. I had to get Mom to give me permission to speak on her behalf. And I talked to a person and I went through the whole thing. And at this point, we knew she had been diagnosed with dementia. So this was very late in 2013, probably around Christmas time. And we knew we were moving her to Oregon. So I needed to cancel this. And it seemed like a good time because it wasn't like we could transfer DirecTV to another house. She was moving in with someone else. So I used that and the dementia and just really tried to explain to somebody, here's what's going on. We need to cancel this. And when I got confirmation that it was canceled and I wrote down the confirmation number, I said, I know you guys call back and I know you try to get people to sign up again and you give them a screaming good deal. And I said, she has dementia. If you call her, she's going to say yes. Please, please, please put in the notes not to call her. And it was a few days later that I was talking to Mom on the phone and she mentioned that DirecTV called. I mean, I wasn't mad at her. I was like, hold on, I'll call you back. And I got right on the phone with DirecTV. And luckily, Mom had given me permission to speak on her account. And I had a come to Jesus with the person that I talked to. And I was like, you all need to understand that when somebody has dementia, you cannot do that. Don't do that. I'm sure they still do that, because it's a good business practice to try to get customers back with a great deal. But I was just livid that I had tried to be very clear about it, and then they called and tried to get her back anyway.
And, when she and I went in finally, when we had gotten everything squared away and her account was zero, and we went into the bank, I remember, because, a lot of banks, they're all windows on the front. We were walking in and I saw that manager. She saw us coming. She ran in the back. And to be quite honest, I don't blame her at all. I mean, Mom attacked her. And I mean, it was really, really hard to watch because Mom was in her own reality that, this was all happening. And this lady was the one who was doing it and taking all of her money and causing all of these issues. Yeah. So what we did after that is we shut her account down, and then we had her Social Security come to one of those prepaid Visa cards.
Yeah.
And that also turned into a colossal nightmare at another bank where I actually was the one who was crying and shaking as I walked out of the bank, because Mom didn't understand that either. She walked into the bank and she thought this was her bank, where she could get things done and do things. And it wasn't. It was a prepaid, Visa card that had this bank's name on it. Mom didn't have an account there. This was not her branch, nothing. But she had that name. So that's where she was going to deal with her stuff and get her money and, do all the things because she'd overdrawn it again. And she was just so frustrated. But I remember when I got out into the parking lot at that one, I was shaking and I called you and I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
And I handed the phone to her, and you talked to her for a few minutes, and we just drove home in silence.
Yeah.
Because it was just, she had absolutely no concept of at this point, what a card was and an account balance and what you could do with that. I mean, she thought, I have a card, that magnetic strip works.
Yeah.
I have money.
Yeah. And she also, I know you paid off some of her debts. I know that her church paid off some of her debts. I paid DirecTV a cancellation fee and a certain amount of months to get her out of her contract. And then I also had to pay her PayPal account in order to close it. And then I can't remember if it was you or me or the church that made some payments on the Target card. And then she went out and charged up the Target card. And then she also had a Kohl's card that we paid off or closed. Did you close that one?
What I did was I took her, and it was my money, but I took her to Kohl's. We went to the customer service department. I said, how much is the balance? The lady told me, and I wrote a check or, used my debit card, and I paid her account. And I said, please close this account. And Mom was there. Of course, she had her lips all pursed, and she was mad and everything. But I said, please close this account. And the lady was like, all right. So it was all done.
Yeah.
The very next day, Mom was in walking distance of Kohl's. But keep in mind, it was Arizona, and it was probably 100 degrees out. She walked 6 blocks to the Kohl's, opened her account back up, charged the whole freaking kit and caboodle back up to the max.
Yeah.
In one shopping trip.
Yep. Yeah, and when she came to Oregon, because we moved her to Oregon, I think she flew up here 2 or 3 days after Christmas, and she lived with our Aunt Kathy for a little while because Kathy was home all the time and I wasn't. And Kathy's husband was retired, so he was also home. And Brian and I, my husband and I, worked, and so we couldn't be home. I also had a place with stairs, 2 flights of stairs, which Mom could not have done. And Kathy's house was flat. So, and it worked out that Mom stayed there, but that Kohl's bill got forwarded to Kathy's house. And I opened it up and took one look at it, and I was just like, all right, we're going to leave this one. And I know we left part of the Target bill unpaid. And then by the time we got her bank account closed, she was listed in check systems for being overdrafted for so long. And we left that too, hoping that it would keep her from going to some store like Fred Meyer, which is her favorite place in the whole world, and opening a charge card.
Yeah, it was really sad that we ended up doing that. It wasn't that, she didn't, she did charge that stuff up. Yeah. I mean, some of it we made her return, but in the end, the only way to keep her from going back in, because when I paid off her Kohl's account, all they saw in their system was the account was paid off and the person was in good standing.
Yeah.
So the only way to keep her from being able to do that again was not to have her in good standing.
Yeah.
So we had to make the choice not to pay those.
Yeah.
And to leave them the way that they were.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened, and there's a special place in hell for these people, is the car.
Oh.
She had but she had an old Ford Taurus. I mean, it was probably, I would say, early 2000s. So it was probably about 10 or 15 years old at that point, had about 100,000 miles on it. She bought it used. And she got in with this mechanic who was, up the road across the freeway. It was close by. I'm not quite sure how she got hooked up with this mechanic, but it was a husband and a wife, and they owned this little, auto body shop or repair shop. And she would take her car in there and say, there's a noise, or I got a smell, or, whatever. She would go in there and they would say, oh, we have to replace the entire transmission and it's going to cost $2,500. Here's the, I don't even know what it was, but car care, whatever it is, that, their account that they had. So she would put it on credit with them. And then they wouldn't fix anything, or they would fix it just enough. And then 6 weeks later, something else would break, and she would go in and they would say, oh, now it's the ball bearings and we got to replace all. It was always these huge bills that we have to rebuild.
Yeah.
And so she was in the hole with these people quite a bit. And I know every time she walked in there, they saw little old lady. We can take her money. She's not going to know what we're talking about. And there was a couple times I picked her up there, so I knew the place. But in the end, when we sold her car, because we had to get rid of it, if you remember the whole car situation, she stole the car key from me and tried to take her car somewhere, and so we had to hide the car key and take her car. Anyways, we went and sold it at one of those places that they'll basically buy any car. And my husband was driving it out there, and he almost got asphyxiated because there were fumes in that car.
Yeah.
And so he had to drive all the way out with the windows rolled down. And so basically the car was just a complete and total mess. And these people had never really fixed anything. So I don't even have an ounce of guilt for walking away from that bill and not paying a dime.
Yeah.
Not an ounce of guilt.
Yeah.
Because those people took advantage, and Mom had no idea what she was doing. She just, these people were nice. It was a nice young couple, and she thought that they were telling her the truth.
Yeah.
And they just completely took advantage of her. And, the only thing that they didn't do is they didn't take, a lot of her money. They basically put a lot of it on her tab.
Yeah.
And they should take some of her money, but they didn't take it all. They didn't demand payment ahead of time, which she couldn't have afforded it anyway. I mean, we're talking it was like $5,000-$7,000, but the car was only worth, in the end, when we sold it, $1,200.
Yeah.
So the car wasn't even worth that. But yeah, special place in hell for those people and other people who take advantage of the elderly in any manner.
Yeah.
And they knew something was going on with her. I mean, I don't know. That's just me. That one always gets my blood pressure up.
Yeah.
Because those people really, and in the end, I mean, the fumes that were coming out of that car. I mean, Mom could have passed out while she was driving it and died.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been a horrible situation. So, all right. So that's my story about the car.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you got that one out. It's important to get out.
Her bills were such a mess. I can't even begin to tell you how. I mean, I know but I'm talking to the people out there listening. We can't even begin to express to you how messed up her bills were. For somebody who was completely meticulous about her accounting procedures. And was she always wise with her money? No. Growing up, I mean, she made some irresponsible choices. We all do. We all, live beyond our means and all of that. But she was, even when she knew she was living beyond her means, she knew to the dime, or maybe even the penny, how much she was living beyond her means. And then to get this just pile of papers, and it was so sad.
Yeah.
And things were written and nothing made sense. And there were bills that I had never heard of before. And, to know that she was using a Target card in order to eat.
Yeah.
And she tells you, because you don't live there.
Yeah.
Whereas if she had told me, I would have taken her shopping. I mean, I ended up buying her Fry's grocery gift cards so that she would buy groceries.
Yeah.
And she couldn't shop. And the Targets in Arizona are like Walmarts. So they're the biggest things you've ever seen. They have a whole grocery section. I mean, you can buy all your groceries at Target.
Yeah.
But she was doing that because she had to.
Yeah.
Not because she wanted to shop at Target for her food because it was the best deal. I mean, the food's a little more expensive there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and there was a Fry's grocery store right across the street from where she lived. But she couldn't afford to go there because she didn't have
any
a card.
Cash. Yeah, she didn't have any cash.
She had no money.
Yeah.
And I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea at all.
Well, I had no idea either. I had been there, I think, the year before in the summertime, but we didn't talk about any of that stuff when I was there. We just visited about normal things that you do when you're on vacation. Yeah. She must have reached some sort of emotional breaking point because she's very stubborn and always very independent. She must have reached a real breaking point and a real fear, I think, a real fear point of thinking, how am I going to eat? And that's probably the only reason she reached out.
Probably. That's all I can think. But, my advice to anybody out there who even has an inkling that something is going on, snoop.
Yeah.
Because if I had gone over to Mom's and while she was in the bathroom or back in her bedroom, if I, just snooped in her desk a little bit, I would have found the accordion file of the explosion that was her life at the time. I mean, I would have seen it, but I just didn't. Yeah. She'd always been very responsible, always kept track of her money so well. And her apartment was nice. I saw food.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something that was even on my radar. But if anyone out there has any kind of inkling, ask. And if they don't tell you, snoop. It's for their own good. It really is, because we could have gotten it under control long before everything happened. And, our mom wasn't eating and all of that.
Yeah.
It was pretty sad in the end.
Yeah.
And now I understand why when she would come over to my house and I would feed her, we would invite her over for dinner. She would eat until she was sick.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't eating at her house because she couldn't afford food.
Yeah. This was a good conversation to have, I think.
I think so too. I think it's an important conversation to have because it is across the board, it is one of the first signs.
Yeah.
Is something to do with money.
Yep.
And they're not being irresponsible. It's because their brain is not working that way anymore.
Yeah.
Money is a hard thing to keep track of when you are completely lucid and you have really strong brain cells. Take a few of those brain cells away and money it's one of the first things. It's one of the first signs.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time with it. I mean, and I feel most days completely lucid, but
yeah, it's when I get those emails with all the offers, and then I'm like, I need to buy that, and I need to buy that, and I need to buy that, and then I look at my bank account, and I'm thinking, oh, I bought too much.
Yeah, I don't need to buy that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me too. I don't know how many things I put into a shopping cart online. And then I've looked at my bank account, and then I've emptied the shopping cart.
Yeah.
And then, or I've moved it to my wish list instead of the shopping cart.
Yeah.
So, and I can imagine that, when our mom was starting, I mean, the online thing was pretty well underway, but now it's even more prevalent.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, pretty much everybody is buying things online and shopping online, and, PayPal has all of these different subscriptions and stuff. And so I think that now I can imagine it would be even worse than it was when we got into it.
Yeah.
And that's our show, everyone. We'd love it if you would rate and share this podcast And we'd especially love it if you'd call in and share your dementia or Alzheimer's story with us so we can share it with our listeners. Thank you for listening. When they forget, we remember. Have a great day. Bye, sister. Love you.